Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Schroder, and I am presenting some information on anxiety during the COVID pandemic for Treaty 8 Urban Office. I wanted to first off give a brief background about myself, so you know that the information I'm giving you comes from a professional standpoint. I have been a social worker for nearly a quarter decade. I'm going on 23 years, and of those, 11 years with Alberta Health Services as a mental health therapist, working one-on-one with people with various types of mental illness, anxiety being one of the areas that I covered, as well as depression and many other sorts of mental illness. When we think of anxiety, we think, like most people, we have the ability to relax at will, just like how we walk or sleep. However, we don't have that built-in mechanism. In fact, it's the other end. We've got a built-in mechanism to create anxiety, but when it comes to trying to hone it in or bring it down, it takes some work and some training. And often I tell my clients or people I'm working with that it takes about 20 minutes a day practicing strategies and using tools to begin to really manage and cope with anxiety. So today's presentation is about anxiety, and then I'll talk about some strategies and ways that you can cope and manage. So the presentation is called Anxiety Re-COVID-19 Pandemic. About anxiety. So background information about anxiety. Often anxiety presents as an uneasy feeling or tension or worry. It seems like there is a danger or threat. Anxiety is very normal and can be very helpful to humans. But too much anxiety is not helpful. Anxiety is the body's way of responding to being in danger, real or imagined. As you will see, we work through this session presentation. Adrenaline is rushed into our bloodstream to enable us to run away, freeze up, or inaction, and or fight. So you've heard of the term fight, flight, or freeze. Well, that's anxiety, and that's the built-in mechanism that I was alluding to in the previous slides. It is the body's alarm and survival mechanism. If you think about primitive man, that they would not have survived for long without this life-saving response that our bodies have. Unfortunately, it works so well that it often kicks in when it is not needed, i.e., for example, when the danger is in our heads rather than a reality. We think we are in danger, so that's enough to trigger the system to turn up the dial within our systems. People who get anxious tend to get into the scanning mode where they're constantly on the lookout for danger, or they're hyper alert. And they're hyper alert to any signals that make it more likely that the alarm system will be activated. How much anxiety do you have? So when I mentioned the thermometer, meaning if we're feeling relaxed, we're probably sitting at a 1. It's easy. There's no real anxiety there. But as we begin to have some worrisome thoughts, such as this pandemic and the unknown, what does this mean? We start to pose a bunch of questions in our minds, and we start to stir up that temperature gauge to the point where you're feeling quite anxious and it's really tough to manage. You might be short-tempered at home or with your loved ones. You might feel like you're going crazy and you can't handle it. You feel out of control. We're sensitive to worry. The worry bell has been struck, and our mind begins to play tricks on us. And most time, it's a false alarm. Yes, it's true, we're in a pandemic, but we're all safe at home. When we're in our home environments, we're not exposed to the virus. Really and truly, we should be more relaxed. And that temperature gauge should be sitting at a 1, quite easy. So in essence, I would say that when we begin to worry about the pandemic and that we're going to get sick and it might cause us to die or we might lose a loved one, that most times it's a false alarm if we're practicing the strategies that the government and the health professionals have suggested. How anxiety gets worse. Our thoughts create feelings. And when we create those feelings, our bodies generate chemicals such as adrenaline. In turn, those chemicals begin the action stage where we're in a kind of spinning our wheels, so to speak, and our anxiety is heightened. So we respond to those feelings and we react to those feelings. One example I gave you earlier was sometimes we're short with a family member, or we begin to really, typically in the current weather that we're in, we might be very, very hyper vigilant about germs. And so we're scared to touch anything outside the home. But we know that if we were to go grocery shopping and we pick stuff off the shelf, as long as we're not touching our face, when we get home, we wipe down our products that we bought, we wash our hands thoroughly with soap and warm water, those germs are gone. So in essence, the risk is quite low as long as we're practicing good hand hygiene. This whole process can spin out of control to the point that we might even reach a panic attack in an extreme situation. And a panic attack is where you feel like you can't catch your breath, your heart is racing, you're sweating, and you feel like you're going to die. One thing that I want to say about anxiety, really, really important point, is that anxiety cannot kill you. You might feel like you're dying during a panic attack, but it will not kill you. And as soon as you say those words, this is an anxiety or panic attack, it's not going to kill me. No one has ever died from an anxiety attack before. It'll bring down that thermometer down a few points so that you can begin to slow your breathing down and gain some control over the anxious moment. The noise in the window. This is just a cartoon that I thought I would like to put out there when we were talking about anxiety. So somebody thinks they heard a noise outside. It's a burglar. So they have that worry thought. They feel scared. Or the opposite of that is when they look out the window and they realize, oh, it's the wind that's picked up and it's just the trees blowing against the window. Immediately that thermometer comes down and they're more at ease. Thoughts that often occur in anxiety include overestimating or exaggerating the actual threat and underestimating or minimizing our ability to cope, such as, I'm in danger right now, the worst possible scenario is going to happen, I won't be able to cope with this. That's the worst. But, as I said, as soon as we begin to have conversation with ourselves, if we're feeling a panic coming on, and we say to ourselves, anxiety cannot kill me. No one has ever died from anxiety. If we tell ourselves that, we bring the points down on that thermometer and we're in charge of that anxiety. And soon we begin to introduce breathing or slower breathing, and we bring that right down to 0.1 of easy on the thermometer. Anxiety and how anxiety can make you think. Something bad will happen. I don't have any control over it. As I said in the previous slide, I don't know what to do. I can't make any mistakes. It will be my fault if it happens. I need to know for sure that it's okay. I can't stand these feelings. I'll go crazy. Now, when I think about it will be my fault if it happens, I had a client a few years back, and she suffered with quite a pronounced form of anxiety, and sometimes it would end up as a panic attack. And she knew, she said to me, it's my fault. I bring it on. I have these crazy thoughts. So we had to do some therapy to begin to look at those thoughts and sort of be able to pull them away so that she was in more control of it, and to not blame herself. Now, some of these thoughts were created by a trauma that she had experienced, and sometimes anxiety comes on from trauma. So I just want to reiterate that, like I did with her, it's not her fault, and there is a way to cope and manage. And it's really getting to know your anxiety and knowing how you can take charge by engaging in exercises on a daily basis where you're practicing relaxation and coping and managing to lower anxiety. How anxiety can make your body feel. As I said earlier, you feel nervous, tense, uptight, you can't relax. Stomach pain, some people even have diarrhea or feel sick. Lots of times people that are doing presentations to large groups of people, sometimes they feel a little bit queasy in the stomach, or they feel like throwing up. That's a bit of anxiety, and their heart might be pounding or sweating. But as soon as they begin to talk to themselves and clear their mind and feel like they're back in charge, those numbers on the thermometer begin to drop, and they become more in control of their surroundings and themselves, body and mind. Other things that can happen with the body, of course, is trouble breathing, as I mentioned earlier, in the case of panic attacks. Sometimes people with anxiety have trouble sleeping, or they might have nightmares. They feel on edge or on a high alert for danger. I won't go into the adrenaline process because I did speak about that earlier, but just briefly, what happens is your body feels that adrenaline surge, blood begins to flow to the larger muscles in your body, mostly your legs, because your legs are what gets you moving. It actually helps you to engage in that action stage where you're able to run or fight. Might be in your arms as well if you were going to fight. And it works on the other side too, where some people will just automatically freeze when they feel quite anxious about something and they can't speak. They're what oftentimes people refer to as they're in shock, but really it's a really heightened moment of anxiety. Now, I wanted to share that information on anxiety and what's actually going on within your body, so you have an understanding of what's happening when you begin to feel anxious. So that gives you some insight as to what you need to do to gain control over this anxiety. And I will give you some examples of some things that you can do to begin to slow or bring down that thermometer. How anxiety can make you act. So for some people, they have checking behaviors where they over and over make sure of something. For example, maybe they're afraid of being alone in their home, so they might check their windows and doors over and over. They're feeling quite anxious. They don't want to be alone, so they'll check the locks. Or they might be asking a family member over and over, did you make sure that you did ... Or they feel helpless. I can't handle it. And then, of course, avoidance. No way I'm doing that. So if you were asked to do a presentation, let's say, and you've never presented before, you might feel like there's no way I'm doing that. And you want to escape. I'm out of here. That is the action stage of anxiety. Behaviors may be not going out, go to certain places at certain times. For example, when I think about some clients in the past that were afraid to be around others or in public, they would avoid shopping. They would only shop during the real slow periods of time, so very early in the morning or the last few minutes before the store closes. Usually it was first thing in the morning when there's less crowds. And even then they would have to key themselves up and sort of talk themselves into being able to go into the stores. They quickly got their stuff and they were out. Now, when I think of behaviors too, I want to just point out that indeed some behaviors will keep us safe, but if we were to continue negative behaviors, i.e. we avoid going out, then we can set that anxiety in stone, meaning that becomes very factual and it's hard to break down. You've heard of people that become recluses where they stay in their home and they can't leave their homes. That's because of a heightened amount of anxiety and feeling unsafe. And it takes a lot of therapy and work to begin to be able to help those people to begin those first steps of taking, going out on their doorstep for 3 minutes at a time. And it's a process of therapy to get you to that. So I would hate for any of you to actually feel that type of anxiety. And, with this pandemic, we were all told to socially isolate and stay at home as much as possible. In actuality, it's really important for us to get outside as well. Make sure that we, go stand on our doorstep, go out on our patio or go for a walk, but just make sure that you're keeping that 2 meters or 6 feet distance from others. Very, very important in order to keep your mind healthy. Now, another thing I have to say is this behavior of becoming a recluse is something that takes a long time of staying at home and avoiding. So it's this pandemic is not going to create you to become a recluse, but what I'm saying is that it's really important for us to have healthy minds and healthy bodies. So a part of that is getting some exercise, going out for a walk, or getting some sunshine. We need that vitamin D to help our moods and help our bodies and minds function in a normal manner. What can we do to bring down your feeling temperature or your anxiety? Remember that you are in charge. As I said earlier, do not give anxiety the one up. Tell yourself that you will not die from anxiety. It might be uncomfortable in the moment, but you are in charge and you can bring this down. You can learn to change how you think and how you act. So some self-dialogue in your brain, as like the slide back a few slides back where we had the cartoon where the one person thought there was a burglar and the other one said, hey, no, it's just the trees brushing up against the window. That brings you the anxiety temperature down once you realize that there's nothing there to be afraid of. Do the opposite of what anxiety tells you to do. So if it's telling you to stay indoors, try not to stay indoors, go out. go to the edge of your driveway, or go outside and tinker in your shed, or go for a walk and keep that safe distance between you and others of 2 meters. You're safe as long as you're 2 meters away. Face your worries. You can find out nothing bad will happen. You will get used to the scary feeling, which in turn will begin to tell your mind and your body that it is safe and the temperature gauge will come down. Teach your brain to be brave. The more you practice, the easier it gets. 3 things to bring down your feeling temperature. Calm your body through self-dialogue. Flip your thoughts. Change your thoughts. So if you're having worry thoughts about the pandemic, think about how great it is to be at home with your family, having some quality family time. Maybe do something fun with you and the kids. Play a game, play a board game. Maybe you guys can build a fire, as long as it's a safe fire and we're not, I don't think we're currently under orders not to have fires in our fire pits in our yard. So a nice wiener roast would be awesome, right? And you begin to change that worry thought. You move it out to something very, very pleasant. You're facing your fears when you're doing that, because you're getting out of the house, you're having a wiener roast, so you're flipping your thoughts. Lots of times when I say change your worry thoughts, it's about doing something else. So if you have worry on the brain, a lot of times, this is quite common for women, they'll often go into clean mode, because if they're kept busy, then they're not thinking. So they'll start cleaning, and that's a good thing, because I mean, cleanliness is great. In excess, it could be a problem, but you know, if you're doing it just to sort of calm those worrisome thoughts that you might have about the pandemic, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'd say go for it. The other thing is pick up a book, watch a movie, go for a run. There's many things that we can do to switch those worry thoughts out. Calm your body through slowing down your breathing. Relax your muscles. So you want to sit quietly and maybe do that deep breathing exercise. Pay attention to your muscles in your neck, the muscles in your face, around your eyes. You want to direct those muscles to relax. You want to direct the muscles in your jaw to relax, all the way through your neck, your shoulders, down your arms, into your hands, down your back, in through the front of your stomach, your torso, all the way down to your lower back, into your upper legs, down to your knees, down to your calves, and into your feet. When you actually hear someone say that, and when you follow along to that, you can begin to feel your muscles relax. Your breathing slows. So you're actually calming yourself. The other thing that I would say in order to be healthy is eat healthy. Don't go to the garbage foods. I mean, there's lots of little memes out there about people constantly being in the fridge because they're bored and they have nothing to do during this isolation period. But I would say, you know, cut some carrots up, some celery sticks, have those at easy access. Instead of reaching for a bag of chips, maybe grab that or a piece of fruit. It's really important for us to get some exercise quite regularly through the week as well. That's why I keep suggesting getting out, going for a walk, or going for a run. Keeping your 2 meters from others that you meet along your running trail or your walking trail. And get a good night's sleep by keeping a good bedtime schedule or routine. And what I mean by that is ensuring that you're going to bed the same time every night, that you're turning down the lights. You're also turning down maybe your thermostat a bit, because we do sleep better when the temperature is a little bit cooler in our rooms. You're not engaging in the use of devices such as your iPhone or your iPad or TV, because that really just signals the brain to stay awake. So try to avoid those things. Perhaps maybe turning on a relaxation meditation or some calming music. Dim your light slowly, do some deep breathing exercises, and do that exercise where you're asking your body to relax from the head down to your feet, and you guide yourself from the top of your head all the way down, as I did a few minutes ago. If we get into a routine that is concrete, we will find that our sleep is easily engaged, as opposed to laying awake, staring at the ceiling, or feeling quite tense about the situation that we're under. What I want to say about the pandemic is we have some control over this pandemic if we follow the rules that are put in place. If we stay home, if we wash our hands regularly, if we go out for groceries, as I said, using those strategies to ensure that we're not passing germs onto our hands, and then again, touching our faces or mouths or eyes, because it's really easy for us to touch our faces and eyes and mouth throughout the day. In fact, we do that quite often. So when you're out and about shopping, it's really important to remind yourself not to bring your hand up to your face. Get home, wipe down everything, wash your hands in nice soapy warm water, and you will be fine. We do have control over this pandemic, and if we can get that curve to go down, so much the better. We're going to get through this. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. So again, as I mentioned, we want to change the worry thoughts to calm thoughts. What am I worried about? And this means really paying attention to what kinds of thoughts am I having? What is it that is bothering me? What are the chances it will happen? Well, as I said, when I gave you the example of going shopping and using all of the strategies that the public health service has provided and our government, the chances are going to go down for you in terms of catching COVID. What else could happen? Well, there's some things that are beyond our control, and usually it's outside of you. So when we think of that question, what else could happen? Well, there might be other people that will get COVID, and they might get that because they're not practicing the strategies that we've been asked to practice by our government and our health authorities. And there is nothing we can do about that, but what we can do, what we're in charge of, is protecting ourselves and using rational and logistical strategies that we've been seeing on the news every day. So what happens if? What happens if you get sick? Well, what we're also hearing about this particular virus is that the symptoms for some people are very mild. Some don't even feel it. Some just feel a slight cold. Not everyone is going to get the full-blown where they have to go into hospital. But of course, if your breathing becomes difficult, you absolutely should be visiting a hospital immediately so that you can get the support that you need from the doctors and nurses that are there to support you. Can I be absolutely sure it won't happen? I think for myself, what I say to myself is I'm sure that it won't happen to me because I'm practicing all of those strategies, and I am self-isolating at home. I'm still getting out for fresh air. I'm still engaging with my family here at home. But we are using the strategies that the government and the health authorities have suggested. So my chances of us getting it, I think, are very, very slim. How could I handle it if it did happen? You need to reach out to the support people in your area, those being the health authorities, the doctors, the nurses. They're there to support you. They're there to help you. The other thing that I wanted to say when I think about these worry thoughts and calm thoughts is that we can definitely take charge of our home and our needs by ensuring that we're going only out to the stores one time per week. We're getting everything that we need for the whole week. We stock up on our essentials so that we're not out in the public more than once per week. And those times, like I said, you need to really be diligent about using the precautions put in place. Washing your hands often, wiping down your items that you bring into your home. And I'm positive if we keep up with that, the less chance that we're going to catch this virus. So what I would say is we need to engage ourselves in that self-dialogue, that self-talk about how we keep ourselves safe from threats, how we can plan accordingly, and how we are in charge. And when we take charge and we use the strategies that have been suggested by the experts, the less chance that we're going to have any issues with the virus, and the less chance that we're going to have a lot of anxious feeling. We're going to be in control, so that thermometer on the anxiety chart, the anxiety thermometer, will be sitting at a 1. Sometimes it might creep up to a 2 or a 3 because it's human nature for us to think about that. But as soon as you begin to feel like you're having some increased anxiety, engage in what am I worried about? What's bothering me? What are the chances? And as soon as you answer those questions, and if you answer them the way I answered them a few minutes ago, the chances are you're going to bring down that anxiety, and it's really overthinking and over worrying that's creating anxious thoughts and feelings. Face your fear. You are braver than you think. There are a number of therapeutic strategies the therapist will use to support someone who is struggling with anxiety. One of those is exposure therapy, and as this slide indicates, it's done in steps. What essentially it means is to engage in the challenging your anxiety by slowly exposing yourself to the provocation of anxiety. For example, when I think about exposure therapy, this is one technique that a therapist might use. I've used it in the past. I had a client that found that her anxiety really heightened to near panic when she visited a certain area of our community where she felt that it triggered a lot of memories of the wildfire that ravaged our community. In her case, what we did is we did the self-dialogue. We practiced in session, and we did some visualization about her being in the area, and we did cueing of her body to slow her breathing down and relaxing muscles throughout her body. And then the next step was to slowly immerse her in that particular area by doing some drives to the community area, and then slowly getting her to maybe take a walk or a few steps in her old community area. Now that's an extreme case of anxiety. That's not the case for most people, but that's one technique that a therapist would use. But the most common technique that we would use is flipping our thoughts, changing the worry thoughts to something more pleasant. And we can do that by visualizing something more pleasant or engaging in something. I gave you the example of a woman or mom cleaning the home when she felt anxious because that lowered her anxiety, which is really doing the opposite of what her anxiety was telling her to do, which was to sit and sort of sit in this worry mode where anxiety begins to really get heightened, and pretty soon she's reaching a point of a panic attack. When we flip our thoughts to something that we have more control over, then that anxiety comes down, or it just kind of flushes to the background and it's no longer present. Anticipatory anxiety is sort of that antsy feeling. So another example of that would be when you're nervous about a presentation that you might be giving next week. So you're sitting and you're worrying in advance of that particular date that you're going to be presenting. So you have anticipatory anxiety. And again, you would engage in those steps for relaxation or flipping the thoughts, doing something that takes you away from feeling antsy or feeling anxious. Or maybe you practice your presentation so you feel more confident in delivering that presentation. Teach the feeling brain that it's a false alarm. So when we flip our thoughts, it's actually telling your brain that it's false. There's nothing for you to be anxious about. You can also get used to anxiety. You can keep an anxiety journal and pay attention to your thoughts. And you gauge your anxiety and you practice bringing that thermometer down by using the tools of relaxation or flipping thoughts or doing something of the opposite. Maybe watching a comedy movie where you're flipping your thoughts and you're getting away from anxious thoughts. Find out how brave you can be by challenging your anxiety. Go into a crowded room or store. A lot of people don't want to even leave their homes, but in reality, that's not something that we can all do, right? We need groceries, we need supplies, so we do have to go out. You can do that by confidently reassuring yourself that if you practice safe strategies when you're out and about in the stores through the use of ensuring that social distancing of 6 feet, sanitizing your hands, wiping down your goods, and then washing your hands as soon as you get in your home, chances are you're not going to catch COVID and you're going to be fine. Other strategies for coping and managing anxiety. So these are the touchy-feely ones that I really enjoy using myself. Not everybody is into those types of strategies, but I sure enjoyed them. I actually enjoy them even after a hard day's work. So for people that are quite stressed or anxious, using self-soothing tools such as doing crafts where you're actually flipping your thoughts or you're changing your thought process to focusing on maybe you're crocheting or knitting or wood burning if you work in a shop or you're working with leathers. Another one is have a long relaxing bath, listen to some soothing music, read a book, watch a movie that is opposite to what you were feeling. That's why I suggest a comedy or something that you're not going to add to your anxiety. Like, for example, you wouldn't want to watch the movie Contagion right now. That would just heighten your anxiety given our situation around the world. But watching something that's funny or something that's a family-oriented movie, Call of the Wild, I watched that the other day with my grandson, great family movie, and it's it's a touchy-feely movie. It's wonderful. You can do something to distract you from your intrusive thoughts by engaging in other types of activities, such as playing games, board games with your family, your children, or your spouse. Reading is one way of really taking worry thoughts out and pushing them out, because when you're reading, you're kind of in the midst of your book. You really kind of just zone out, and you're focused on the story that's in your book that you're reading. So picking up something that's kind of not a heavy read, but something that's light and easy read, even flipping through a magazine, that would be something that's seen as a tool that you can use to begin to calm the anxiety that you might be experiencing from time to time. And you might have to do this throughout your day. Like when we think about being at home, it's not like a few months ago where we were working and we're out of our homes and we come home in the evening and we only have a few hours. Now we've got the whole day. So, you're left with a lot of downtime where your mind can get carried away. So you might have to find a lot of things to do during the day. One thing that I would suggest is making a list of the things that you can engage in to flip thoughts or bring down the anxiety temperature. You'll get through it. Trust yourself. You're in charge and you can do this. You are in charge. You can be in charge. You can choose to worry or you can choose to be brave. And I wonder, which will you choose? I've given you a number of strategies. Like I said, the most common tool that you would use in therapy would be flipping thoughts or switching thoughts, changing up your thoughts to something that's less worrisome. And we can do that by distracting ourselves, by engaging in something that is pleasant, that makes us feel happy, that makes us feel relaxed. Having a long bath, going for a walk, going for a run. Exercise is great. When we're feeling really, really anxious, one of the best things that we can do is engage in exercise. And the reason being is when we get into that heightened sense of fear or fight or flight, there's a bunch of chemicals that your brain produces, one being adrenaline. And the best way to reduce those chemicals is by using the large muscles in your body. And the best way to do that would be to run, to box, to use those large muscles, because when we're engaging and using those muscles, we're flushing out those chemicals. And it's a real fast way to bring down anxiety. So if you're reaching that mode of panic, it would be wise to maybe get into something that is very physical, like running or jogging or boxing or any type of cardio exercise would be wonderful, because you will notice that tension, that anxiety begins to come down. That's one that we often tell clients, is to use your large muscles to flush out those chemicals quickly. So you are in charge, in essence. Anxiety passes away and is harmless. Anxiety cannot kill you, even though it feels like you cannot breathe during a panic attack. If you tell yourself, and it's a fact, it will not kill you, you automatically bring down the anxiety by about 2 points, enough to begin to slow down your breathing. When you slow down your breathing, you bring it down another 2 points, and pretty soon you're all the way down to a 1 or a 2 on that thermometer. You don't have to like it, you just have to know how to handle it. Avoidance strengthens the fears. Exposure weakens it. So when I think about that, I'm thinking about the example of my client that was afraid to go into her previous commute area where she used to live prior to the wildfire. When we exposed her to it, it weakened that anxiety, and pretty soon it had no control over her. She was able to go into that area and not have any feeling of anxiety whatsoever. Habituation of anxiety is natural and automatic, so be easy on yourself. It's not your fault. Anticipating anxiety, thinking about doing it may be harder than actually doing it. So that's again tied into that exposure. You know, challenge yourself, get out there, go do the groceries, but use the common sense, use those strategies that the health authorities and the government have suggested. Hand sanitization, 6 feet away from others, wiping down your goods when you get home, and washing your hands. Even if you maybe get out of those clothes, if you've been in the market for a long time, maybe you want to just throw your clothes in the wash and get a clean set of clothes on. That's one way of keeping things at bay as well. And they actually say that for those people that, like the nurses, when they get home from work, it's, you go, you disrobe, put your laundry into the washer, and jump in the shower immediately. And then the chances go down that you will be bringing that virus into your home. So there's common sense strategies. If we engage and recognize what those are, the less chance that we're going to feel anxious. That brings us to a close in terms of what I wanted to share about anxiety. I am open to a question and answer period for those of you that might have questions. If you have questions, please email them to Treaty 8 Urban Office. If you include your email address, I'd be happy to answer questions emailing back to you directly. I do have a question myself. Do you have any advice for people who are living alone? Absolutely. One of the things that I would suggest is reach out to people via video conferencing, video chats such as FaceTime. There's also the helpline, the crisis line numbers that you can call if you needed to speak to somebody, if you were struggling and you weren't sure who to call. There is the crisis line number, which is 1-877-303-2642. Again, that number is 1-877-303-2642, and that's a helpline crisis line number. You can also, reach out to any of the health links numbers that if you were to go on to Alberta Health Services, there's a number of links on that site for mental health. But if you do have a circle of family outside of your living quarters, like if you have extended family, do reach out to them by telephone. I'm staying in contact with my granddaughters in Edmonton through Google Chats and through FaceTime. And that's one way that we're staying connected. And it's amazing when you're able to see somebody virtually and have a conversation. I'm also doing that with my siblings as well. We're having little faces and we dialogue with each other. And it feels like you're not alone. And you aren't alone. You're not alone in this. I would encourage anybody that is feeling anxious on a daily basis to reach out to Alberta Mental Health and request to speak with a therapist, because they're there to help you as well. That's something that you've been trying and you've been working on bringing down your temperature on your anxiety thermometer. and you might have some success, but you feel like you need a little bit more support, reaching out to a therapist, there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would encourage it because you become an expert in managing and coping with your anxiety, and you'll avoid some of those really intense anxiety spells if you do that.